things. Let's check out Surrender versus SamuelTsao.
There are no breaks on this train. We're heading straight into the second.
You just do the
match.
papers with authority.
Yeah, exactly. I'm taking this over, all right, Raven.
Okay, well, talk to me about Surrender and SamuelTsao then.
Well, I'm going to take a quick look at their decks, but in terms of the players, I think we obviously know Surrender is our candidate from the Asia Pacific region, going through to the finals at BlizzCon. He had a very, very strong Season 1 here in Grandmasters for the Asia Pacific. SamuelTsao on the other side, a little bit of a lukewarm series, I think it's fair to say. He had, some reasonable weeks where he was getting a win and a loss, a win and a loss. But I think after his pretty bad starts to the tournament, he ended up in a very poor spot overall. So I expect to see him definitely shaking something up. Whether it be more creative decks that he's bringing, a different play style, he's going to have to go for something different.
Okay, and we do see what has happened here. And again, more surprises for me. And this is going to be a Protect on Surrender's Hunter. So Surrender does have his Hunter available, and his Mage has been banned out by SamuelTsao, where SamuelTsao has had his Hunter banned out by Surrender. So Surrender showing effectively double levels of respect to Hunter, protecting his own and banning out Samuel's, and actually protecting his Warrior. So this just shows, again, it's kind of similar to what we just saw.
It is.
The straight up, I'm banning Mage and protecting Warrior versus I'm protecting Hunter and banning Hunter. So let's see how it shakes out for these two players. Surrender versus SamuelTsao.
It's going to be pretty interesting outside of that, I think. For the most part, it's a lot of the decks that we saw last time Surrender, with a little bit different to Shaxi in the previous series, with instead of the Druid, he's going with the Hunter, and he's obviously got that Priest there again, as we can see. SamuelTsao, however, with a little bit more of an aggressive strategy overall, I think, at least an aggressive slant in his lineup, with the Aggro Rogue, the Reno Hunter as well, or the Highlander Hunter.
Yeah,
it's pretty close to a mirror matchup overall, right? Surrender with one of the only players to not bring Warrior, the vast majority of players going there. So I guess overall Surrender actually has the slightly more aggressive lineup.
Yeah, SamuelTsao's just not happy with the way the bans and deck came out, and he's just left. I'm joking, of course. But yeah, he's Surrender played a lot of Warrior in Season 1 and did very well with it as well. I remember the time he changed over, I'll say, to Warrior and started playing for a few weeks. It did go very, very well. So I'm a little bit surprised he didn't bring it. But maybe this is where the formulation of the lineup comes into it, and saying, well, if a lot of people are expecting Warrior, I just don't bring it, and then they have to make sort of on-the-fly decisions. So we can check out Surrender's Priest. Yeah,
this is going to be the Priest versus Rogue matchup. I find this matchup very, very interesting indeed, because the Priest, as we can see here, very similar to the one we just saw. I think instead of the sidekicks, he's got a couple of extra mid-range cards thrown in there as well. But for SamuelTsao on the Rogue, the really interesting thing is that while this is an aggro Rogue deck, all of the kind of aggro-facey cards, which mainly comes in the form of weapons, can transition over to removal very effectively if necessary. And I think early on in this matchup, I really like keeping cards, as I said a little while ago, like Deadly Poison, Backstab, SI, Eviscerate, Hooked Scimitar if you're on the coin, anything that clears off their minions early on. Because when you're taking value trades like that, it's very, very easy to dominate the board around turns 3 or 4. Then you transition over to your burn plan, and usually I'm finding it's a pretty good matchup for the Rogue there.
Yeah, and funnily enough, although Priest heals a lot in these matchups, in this deck, it doesn't heal itself for much and can't. So there's a certain amount of when SamuelTsao decides to say go, the damage is not permanent but close, because there isn't self-heal cards. It's not like it's not the Quest Priest, for example, that can heal for even more. It's actually just straight up 2 to self, and that's more or less it. All the healing normally goes onto the board, so this will be a tough one, I think, for Surrender.
I agree, and I think that's an interesting point you raise about not being able to heal the face much, because I think that introduces a really interesting break point in the matchup, which is where, while I said I like removing early on, there's been a lot of times I've played this matchup and I've done that for too long. I've removed everything turn after turn after turn, and if the Priest hits any kind of card draw at all, that won't work forever. They'll hit Amet, they'll go for these crazy high health minions later on, and you just won't be able to contest on the board as the Rogue.
Even a strong Psychopomp, right?
Exactly, just something like that can be plenty good enough to lock the Rogue out of board. And so I think finding that key point to transitioning over to damage early on is where the Rogue will really win or lose the matchup.
Yeah, and the big difference as well is if the perfect scenario for Rogue is if you can remove the first couple of threats, because they're the ones that snowball the hardest, I think, and then you fall back on cards like, or exactly Snap, sap, and yeah, just Thanos snapped them away. It still works. And say, for example, eviscerates as well to have emergency, like whoa, slow down minion while I damage face. So I think that'll be the grand plan there from SamuelTsao. I imagine he's back and he's ready to go. There we go. It just took a quick 2 seconds, which is fine. But let's kick off match number 2: Surrender versus SamuelTsao, Priest versus Rogue.
I gotta say, I think we've got a couple of good candidates for the Hearthies at the end of Season 2 here for worst placement of their backdrops. Surrender hasn't even bothered, which, you know, I can kind of respect that. SamuelTsao has not seemed to grasp the concept of 3 dimensions and that you can't place it sideways and it won't block out. He's kind of like got a neo-cubist art style approach to backdrop.
I'm just imagining that actually what we don't see is if he turned so his back was to the screen, there's like a full camera modeling setup. But I think he's just, oh, sorry, I forgot to change it. He's been using it, full light boxes and everything. For his on-the-side modeling work, of course.
I can see it.
Yeah, I mean, well, I can't see it, that's the problem, but we're just going to imagine it's there. But Nullshire Cleric on 1, looking pretty good. Surrender tilts his head, maybe not too happy with the rest of it. What's he looking for? Extra arms by any chance?
Is someone injured?
Yes, well, that is the God curve, I suppose, as it's been dubbed. One of the reasons why people were happy to see extra arms being nerfed, one of the reasons why people were expecting Cleric to be nerfed over extra arms even, is the 1-2 punch of Cleric into extra arms into whatever you want. You probably won the game at that point. SamuelTsao, I believe, with a full keep there on the mulligan. With a hand, I actually don't mind all too much. If he wasn't met with exactly Cleric, we could have seen Pharaoh Cat on 1. And this is a hand that now pretty easily represents, I would say, Coin Van Cleef. Deadly Poison represents a strong turn 3 as follow-up. And then the curve into Waggle Pick is, I think, maybe slightly questionable there. But again, it's just more removal and represents a lot of damage face.
Yeah, I really like it, actually. I think being able to contest this early and so directly is very, very powerful. You often don't get the chance versus Priest. I feel like most decks are very much on the defensive, where it's just chucking out a Van Cleef pretty early. It should look pretty nice. And that, having the sap now as well for SamuelTsao, it feels so safe. The second that there's a Divine Spirit and no Inner Fire on a minion, or even if there is without a big hit for lethal, snap away, there's -1 Divine Spirit, enjoy.
Surrender will obviously have that in the back of his mind as he considers whether he should go for the Divine Spirit right now. I think, you know, if he was to be met with just sap on this turn, that would really not be all too bad.
I think it would be like a neutral nod, wouldn't it? You'd just be like, okay, fair enough, let's carry on.
Let's do this again sometime.
Yeah. It's like when you know, less of a friend, more of an acquaintance style interaction.
Yes.
Now there are even more choices, because you could forgo the Van Cleef to go for maybe Coin Pick with Backstab next turn. That's if you're under the impression the Cleric is going to stay at 6 health, is the problem there, I guess.
Oh man, it's such a tough situation because Coin Backstab Edwin is the obvious consideration. But then if you're met with Powered Shield Divine Spirit, or Powered Shield Inner Fire, or Topsy-Turvy just to take it out, things could go very, very wrong very quickly. Like, if your Edwin gets value traded there, you're miserable. You are
also, there were just 2 straight up silences in the deck. I don't mean minions, just 2 0-mana silence, which means that's very adaptable in terms of Van Cleef silence.
Yeah.
I lose. So both players, again, have to be just very aware of not so much how they get the furthest ahead, but how they don't fall the farthest behind, I think.
And I think that's why SamuelTsao is happy to take it kind of slow here, because if he's met with pretty much anything other than Blademaster Circle of Healing, he'll be able to take it out with a Waggle Pick and a Backstab, if necessary, thrown in there.
What?
Things obviously get more complicated.
Would you ever just throw a Pyro down? I know Pyro has insane combo potential.
Oh, not with a Cleric and a Circle in hand, right? That's way too good.
But what if you never get to the point where you can do all that fancy thing?
I mean, you could do it right now. Like, you could just go Cleric, Pyromancer, Topsy the Pyro, and then Circle of Healing.
You could, okay. I was thinking more just try and set up a safer, just Cleric Blademaster Circle next turn.
That's definitely...
I know that's very low value, but it gets something on the board that should be tricky to deal with. I know, it's tough.
I think just pass here for Surrender, as it looks like he's gearing up for, is perfectly reasonable.
Coin. Scimitar into poison.
Okay. I think I like going for like development on this turn, like Ferrocat, Coin, Edwin. Because
Guess
then
what,
if you're
there's
met
no
with a
minions to
silence,
trade it
it's
to.
not so bad.
Oh, that's not a bad one.
And next turn we could just see Wagglepick or Backstab, Hooked Scimitar, and a Deadly Poison. Like there's so much stuff that SamuelTsao can go for to clip.
Brotherhood shall prevail.
Something's starting to come together here for Surrender. He just needs to figure out how to put these pieces together. And
Whilst
it's
not dying.
Yeah, it's not easy to do so. It's like trying to do a jigsaw whilst a rhino's trampling on your head.
Wow, if you think that's just not easy,
Yeah.
I worry to think what you think hard is, Derek.
I'll tell you.
Yeah. 2 rhinos. It's like, whoa! And now this is, it's where Priest, again, I talked about it in the last series, but Priest is way harder than I think people think it is. Like, yeah, there are games that almost play themselves, but then there are these games which get pretty difficult. This is going to be a nice refill for Surrender, though.
Yeah, this is pretty much what he was setting up for by holding on to the Circle of Healing last turn. Because obviously, Blade Master Circle of Healing was tempting last turn, but not quite what he was looking for. As he finds no spells to play in combination with this at all. A little bit unfortunate there.
There's a Psycho Pump, though, and when there's a Psycho Pump, there's a chance. Because there's still, it's weird, for deck that curves so low, there's still some very powerful late game. Like, imagine, you know, I forgot the name of the legendary because I'm an idiot. The Priest legendary. The 7 dude.
On Samdi.
No, the one that's in his hand.
Oh,
The way more
Amit.
relevant one.
Well, you
to
said
our
the
question.
7 one, so I thought
They're the one with 7 health.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, like that plus Psycho Pump.
Not going to help you out anymore. Yes, that is a
That plus
very
Psycho Pump
powerful
on a
combo.
late turn is still very powerful, and the Priest often can't do turns like that. So Surrender does have options to play a slightly slower game.
Yeah.
This game specifically. I apologize, Derek. One
Apology
Sandy was a
accepted.
very reasonable suggestion.
It was. I shall have a word against it. SamuelTsao obviously wondering here how best to set up for Captain Greenskin on the following turn. Because I imagine weapon this turn, Greenskin turn 5 is what he's looking at. And there was arguments for both just Wagglepick Swing and Hook Scimitar Deadly Poison, because there's a good chance he wouldn't want to activate the Death Rattle because it might bounce the Edwin. In the end, he goes for an even different play there. Just goes wide on the board, I guess, as much as possible. Really doesn't set up for Greenskin nearly so well next turn. But again, he doesn't have to go Greenskin next turn.
Yeah, one thing SamuelTsao has is weapons and time. I think right now he's emptied the board, which is priority number 1 versus Priest. Just don't let them stick a minion.
Yeah.
And then anything on top of that, what he does now is he has a choice, doesn't he? As to whether he wants to go for Wagglepick or for the Scimitar instead, in terms of, well, based off what Surrender is going to do. Whereas Surrender, I don't really know what his plan is.
I mean, it's
Does he just
really
try and get the
close
Blade
to-
Masters into the pool?
oh, I don't even know.
Because Psycho Pump's pretty underwhelming right now.
It's just Cleric and Pyro as it currently
yeah.
stands. Yeah. So he could just go Amit and try and hit a high roll, but that seems like I mean, giving yourself like a 66% chance to probably just lose the game doesn't feel all too tempting.
Wait, Amma? Why?
Well, Amit to res it with Psycho Pump next turn.
Oh, sure, okay.
Sorry, that's what I should have said. The 66% chance is he's likely to hit
Right,
Cleric
right.
or Pyro. But he
I was
could
like,
res it
could
with
go for
Psycho
Amit for the percent chance to high roll. I'm like, high roll what, Derek?
Yeah.
It just didn't do anything. It's like this turn at least. But yes, you are right. The res on the Amma would be insane.
And SamuelTsao, I think, now is at that point I was describing where he needs to try and get as much damage to face as he can while still respecting the Amit, because that's obviously an incredibly scary minion if left alive. He could just be dead on the following turn if he doesn't answer that. And so what does he do?
I think just Wagglepick into Deadly Poison and then trade the 1/2, kill off the Amit, push
Still
6
get
to
6
phase.
damage phase.
That is, and then you've got some scary follow-up. That's a
Just
lot of
counting
damage
Greenskin
follow-up.
is a
Yeah.
huge amount of damage, yeah. It does kind of limit your mana next turn, like just like a rigid Greenskin on 6 mana is not perfect, I think. but
But also, you are flexible. You could end up just swinging again and then going for backstab hooked scimitar anyway.
Good point.
I just think this one is one you want to kill, generally. SamuelTsao really dodging this potential Shadow Step effect from the Waggle pick.
Yeah, this is pretty decent as well, I think.
No, I don't think there's much left to do. I think Surrender's looking at this Psycho Pump. Here we go.
That's definitely not what he was looking for.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Psycho Pump 4 mana 3/1. It resurrects a minion that has died, one of your minions that's died this game, but then also gives it reborn, which starts to get very, very silly.
Yeah.
And I remember when the card got announced, I was like, oh, it seems okay, seems decent, and you were like, what, Raven?
Bananas.
What? If you just play this and it summons the cleric again, it's the nuts.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, I can see it. And then I saw it and I was like, yeah, Derek was right. It's like, fair enough, he got me on this one. I didn't think it was bad, don't get me wrong. I just didn't think it was as silly as it actually is.
It's even the stat line. Like, the fact that it's a 3/1 is actually just, like, good. Like, it's probably better than a 1/3 because it has, like, the higher health bit in the minion it resummons.
Right.
And then it's also just damage. It trades so nicely a lot of the time.
Also, in the current meta, who really cares about health right now? There aren't tons of token decks, right?
Yeah.
You know, yes versus Warrior, it can be a little bit annoying, but outside of that, you're fine.
Now, Sammy T in a bit of a tough situation where, again, we could just see the Captain Greenskin, even with everything launched face. That is, what even is that, like 14 damage on this turn, and then obviously with much more follow-up next turn. That gets close to lethal very quickly.
I would do that play. If I was in SamuelTsau's seat right now, I would play Greenskin, aim it all to face and say surrender. He might have a fancy deck that can do some fancy things. It cannot heal itself for more than 2.
I think because he's got the sap in hand, I agree with you.
Yeah, like what does Surrender actually even... Surrender has to clear the board, take a weapon to the face anyway
and
next turn, and play a taunt, and try and work out a way for him to actually win. Like,
I like this a lot.
It's very, very good heads-up play there from SamuelTsao. I love it.
This is, I mean, again, this is the exact point I was talking about, where you go over the top of the hill, right? You figure out the win is in sight. You just
roll
have to
down.
Push for the lethal. Exactly. Like a
nope, it's not
like
rained.
Chasing a cheese down a hill. It's a very specific English reference. I'm not sure if anyone's going to get that.
I've got more left in me.
So the taunt's there, so 1 box is ticked.
Yes. Now he needs to clear off the entire board and heal for more health than he currently has.
So he can Psycho Pump into the Van Cleef, he can double the health on the Tolveer, which will do the 1 damage to kill off the Cleef. And then he can trade the Pyro into the Greenskin. Then he ends the day with a 3/1 Pyro, a 1/3 Cleric, because he probably doesn't want to kill off or trade, and a 2/10 Taunt. I don't think that sounds bad, considering. I think that's a solid turn. It won't be enough, but it's about as solid as it's going to get, right?
Yeah, he's
He can do either way he trades, whatever, it's the same outcome. But yeah, I think we can see it's not going to be enough, but I think that was a pretty solid turn there from Surrender.
I agree. If there wasn't the sap here for SamuelTsao, this could have gone a little bit awry, which is, again, another reason why I like SamuelTsao's decision to go more aggressive. He had the backup plan in case a big Tolveer came down. Gets the answer, goes up 1-0 with the Rogue, and puts himself in a very nice spot. Only now has to take a victory with either his Warrior or his Mage. And if I had to be in a situation where I had to win with one of the 2 best decks in the game at the moment, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, definitely not too shabby at all. And already, yes, it's early in the day, early in the league, of course, but Priest is not looking as hot as it looked in Seoul. Like, why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think Priest was in an interesting spot in Seoul where, you know, there you're playing against an open field, right? It's not just against 2 opponents each week, and it was still Specialist at that point, so a lot of players could only go with 1 class, obviously, instead of the 4 that's now represented in Conquest with a shield. And the main reason there was a load of mages. There were a whole bunch of mages knocking about that couldn't really answer all the Priest's minions early on, and when you don't answer Priest's minions early on, you die. Which is,
Right.
I think, now why it's struggling a little bit more as we're seeing a much lower density of mages compared to the overall number of decks that are being played, and a much higher density of rogues and warriors.
Yeah, a few more options to pick from, and a few decks that you can play now would not have been safe in a specialist wide field format. But yeah, SamuelTsao taking an early game 1 versus Surrender. He only needs one more game to take the series. Is he going to do it? Find out after this.
Hearthstone Esports is home to many competitive formats, each with their own unique variants and rules. Today, we're going to break down one of them, the Shield Phase Conquest format. And here's how it works. To start, both players bring 4 decks, each from a unique class. The match starts with a Shield Phase. This is where both players choose one of their own decks to protect, making it ineligible to be banned. Once the Protect phase has ended, both players will then ban one of their opponent's decks, removing it from the pool. Each player then selects which of their remaining decks they would like to play first, before beginning the first game of the series. When the first game of the series is over, the winner's deck is removed from their pool of eligible decks. Both players then select the next deck they would like to play. The loser of the first game can choose to replay with the deck they lost with, or they can choose one of their other 2 available decks. In Best of 3 conquests, the first player to 2 wins is the victor. In Best of 5 series, such as those in the semifinals or finals of major events, the first player that makes it to 3 wins takes the W. It's that easy. Shield Phase Conquest allows players to showcase their skill set across different classes, while still giving them the opportunity to play the deck they're most confident with. Now that you've got the download on Shield Phase Conquest, we wish you well on your deck building adventures.
The shadows are rising again, darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tomb, they grab their whips and fedoras. These legends of the past know exactly what to do. There might be magic monsters, mummies in the markets, and ancient mysticism. There sure be scorching deserts, adventure and monster narcissism. High stakes think annihilation, obliteration of civilization. Now is the time to be brave, evil's come to enslave, but this league's gonna save the world.
We are continuing with Surrender versus SamuelTsao, and SamuelTsao taking a pretty, I won't say straightforward in a bad way, but a pretty straightforward win with Rogue versus Priest in the previous game. He just had all the options and then fell back on that sap, kind of just like we said he would want to, right? Just be defensive, and then once the aggro buttons pressed, have that one just pocket card ready to just defend.
I think the main thing is he made it look clean. He made it look really easy in that game. He knew exactly what to go for. I loved all his strategy. Like, when there's minions on the board, you remove with like the sap on the cleric, and then when they take a breather, they're not pushing forward all their priest minions, then you go. Exactly. Edwin was on board right until the end of the game, and I think that was beautifully timed by SamuelTsao, which means he's left now only with his mage and his warrior. As to which one he will queue up, I have to imagine it's going to be the warrior. I think it is very well positioned against pretty much all three of Surrender's remaining decks here.
Yes, I would, as you mentioned before the break, I would be comfortable if I was SamuelTsao going, I've got Mage or Warrior to play against, a flurry of decks here. And again, I think that looking at this, I feel like SamuelTsao's just going to pick Warrior, or at least that's level 1. You have Warrior versus, Priest or Hunter. Both matchups I feel like Warrior is more than okay in.
I agree.
And then Rogue, I haven't personally played the matchup tons.
Take a guess.
But I feel like Warrior is probably pretty okay versus Rogue.
I think you would be correct.
Yeah, okay, well.
There we go.
Yeah, it's going to be Warrior versus Surrender. Warrior versus Surrender. Garrosh versus Surrender. Unfair fight.
I'd say it's kind of close.
No, unfair Surrender would win, obviously. But yeah, sorry. It's going to be Warrior versus Hunter, and this is where you place yourself in a position, as we see Surrender's Hunter deck, where you don't have to mind games anything. It's just the good pick against almost all the classes. So Surrender can't next level SamuelTsao's pick because all of them feel bad.
I fully agree. And taking a look at Surrender's Hunter list here, I think he's probably in with a little bit better of a chance with his Highlander Hunter than in the previous series when we saw it match up against the Warrior. Because he's got a little bit of extra value jam-packed in here with Siamat and I guess the Hunter's pack as well. That does obviously inevitably mean that you are sacrificing a little bit of early game kind of tempo or value. Or aggression even just in the early turns. But I think overall, having a little bit of extra oomph to push you into the late game is no bad thing against Warrior.
I like it, mainly because for me, one of the problems I have with when I'm playing Zephyrus decks is that if you are forced into a reactionary Zephyrus, then you are -1 threat late game, normally in Tyrion. So, like we said in the previous series, Zephyrus came out, didn't do too much. Brand came out, didn't do too much. What else pushes? There was at least a Siamat is something extra, and then you don't know what's going to come out from the Hunter's pack. Whereas here, one of my new favorite cards that have come out of the expansion, the Armadillo, is just a cool card. It's an armadillo with a massive laser on its back, but also has a very interesting effect on how the deck's played as well, because these Frightened Flunkies combined with the Armadillo is actually very powerful, but can also change what you pick off Dr. Boom Discovers, as well as a few other things.
Big time. The Tomb Warden being a mech for who knows why, adding even more defensive capabilities to Warrior. Like you said, if you're offered that off Delivery Drone or you can get it off of Omega Assembly, you are very, very happy indeed to see that now with the extra Taunt synergy that comes again in the form of the Armadillo and Frightened Flunky. I think it just makes overall for a very, very solid Control Warrior game plan now, where I feel like this version of the deck bridges the gap between Control Warrior and Bomb Warrior, where it was a much harsher divide before Saviors of Ulden, where if you went for the Bomb Warrior, you were basically a curve deck that had some controlling capabilities. Control Warrior was very much all out on the control. It had much more limited actual ability to develop onto the board. Now, with the Tomb Wardens, Frightened Flunkies, and Armadillo, you have a lot more ability to curve out aggressively.
The perfect hand. Zephyrus was cast before the game started and offered you the perfect mulligan.
Oh my lord. Yeah,
it's just a cube, yeah.
You can have Zephyrus the Great to give you the perfect card, or Zephyrus the Ultimate to give you the perfect starting hand.
Like in Aladdin, where he's like, ultimate cosmic power, and he's like ripped and everything. That's this Zephyrus in Warrior. Well, with Surrender, it's hard, right? The opening hand is definitely not bad. Subject 9 just ready to pull all the secrets out. Fantastic. Animal Companion, good. Unleash the Beast, great in a matchup like Warrior.
Yeah.
it's just still not as good as this, or even close to as good as SamuelTsAo's hand.
And it speaks to what Surrender's thinking in this matchup is going to be, because we saw with Chonsu in the first series when he was in this matchup, keeping Bran in the starting hand as the Hunter, which I thought was debatable somewhat. It's definitely one of the best cards in the matchup, obviously. It's way above the power curve in terms of what it's supposed to be able to do, but it's very slow. It doesn't come down till turn 7. So I think Subject 9 is a good kind of midway point here for Surrender, where he's able to get it down early, get some value, and also some development, and thin out his deck of secrets.
Why is Warrior
What he
allowed
won't
to
be
do
able
this
to do is keep up against this. What is happening?
Surrender's face, here we go.
Unless you think SamuelTsAo's going to hero power.
No. Come on, Sam.
I think I'd like a double one. Yeah.
Okay. So upset.
Why do you want to see him suffer?
Now he's like, wait, what?
Excuse me, admin.
Yeah. This is clearly cheated in some way. Joking, of course, it's not. But
Yeah.
I just don't really know what to say anymore, because this is as bad as it could get.
That's right. So what is Surrender's out into this game? It's I was talking about the ability for Hunter to function with removal, to function kind of reactively rather than proactively, which it does have in the deck. We already see Kill Command there. There's obviously Eaglehorn Bow in hand. And I think the use of Secret Keeper here is very smart to come down the turn before Restless Mummy would guaranteed be able to kill it off, because having drawn 2 Rush Minions, one of them is at least guaranteed to be a Restless Mummy. And I think it therefore is giving him the best chance to clear up the board. Then you follow up with Animal Companion or Kill Command.
If I told you I was going to sell you on the idea of Hero Power Shield Slam this turn, how much would you dislike it?
Not at all.
Good. Because you would be wrong. Yeah, I think once you test the initial secret push, i.e. this could have been explosive,
Yeah.
I think it's okay to test everything, because I'm surprised the attack wasn't made against the Secret Keeper first, actually. It procs way more secret.
Worried about snake. Well, it only procs 1 more, right? It's just snakes.
Right, but if he's going to do the Shield Slam thing, he procs snakes no matter what. Whereas if that was Explosive Trap, he misses a 1-2 attack, right?
I don't think Explosive Trap is being played in the...
Oh,
no, it
not
is in this build. Oh, no, wait, this is Surrender, sorry.
Yeah. Is he not? Oh, it's not
no,
in
it's
Surrender.
not,
Okay,
yeah.
take it back.
SamuelTsAo.
Apologies.
Yes.
Yeah, he's playing Explosive Trap.
If
It's
there
not
was
Explosive
Explosive Trap, I fully agree.
Yes.
That was the wrong
Yeah.
way to do it. Yes.
But yeah, this, I mean, the Shield Slam, it's not going to be used for a while yet. Look at the rest of the curve. It's fantastic. So SamuelTsAo using that just to keep this board a little bit oppressive here. And Surrender just...
I mean, he knows
Roll
there's
Misha.
a mummy, right? Misha's not even good. Like,
Wow, don't be mean. Misha is a good card, Darren.
in this particular
There you
yeah, I would play a 3-mana 4/4 Tron in my deck. But in this instance, Misha's just, I don't know, doesn't really feel strong enough to fight back against this board,
I
because
don't know if there's a card that exists that's strong enough to fight back versus this board.
Fair point.
It's tough.
I mean, ironically enough, Explosive Trap would be a fantastic way for Surrender to wrestle himself back into this game. Maybe he can get off the Hunter's pack, who knows.
Yeah, maybe.
I thought SamuelTsAo was truly about to become a literal orc and smork his opponent as he trades
Trade
him
the
for
mummy
3-1
again,
just to get 1
I've
extra
done it
damage
before.
to face.
I've done it before.
I'm sure you have.
Is it that much worse? It's 2 health instead
It's
of
running
one.
about Dynamatic. How does it-
Unleash?
Oh no, yeah, no, sorry, he's, yeah.
What about Unleash?
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Well, it's still the same amount of minions.
Yeah, but one of them has 2 health and one of them has 1 health, right?
Fair enough.
Definitely a funny one. Speaking of which, Surrender drew it as well. The punish.
Maybe it was better, who knows. Ugh. I guess for SamuelTsAo, he really needs to start. I mean, I think he can already start thinking about how on earth do I lose this game.
I think he thought about that the second he saw his mulligan. Just mulligans, he's like, oh, I'm safe.
Fair point. There's still Zephyrus, right? Like, Zephyrus can...
It isn't that good, come on. Zephyrus, his best outcome is Tyrion. Does Tyrion
What do
suddenly
you mean
win?
best outcomes Tyrion? There's so many better cards you can get from Tyrion, just reactively to pull him back on the board.
What? Okay.
I don't know, Brawl, Arcane Explosion
I
here,
guess.
Consecration later on.
I guess my point is one reactionary turn good enough to flip the game?
It's not
against
enough to
Warrior.
win the game, it's good enough to give him a chance.
I guess, yeah.
And that's what I mean, it's not over at this point at all. I still definitely put SamuelTsAo in the driving seat. But with his current hand, there's no spot removal until he hits turn 10. So if if Dino Tamer Bran were to hit the board, all of a sudden, maybe the crush hits face twice, who knows? Again, I don't think it's likely to happen, but it's possible.
I think almost regardless of what SamuelTsao did last turn, Subject 9 comes down anyway, thins the deck, gets Surrender closer to Dino Tamer, to Zephyrus, which are going to be the key cards, and also Pressure Plate. The combination now, I feel like Pressure Plate was just the final stone in the gauntlet, because you play all these secrets and it just destroys your opponent no matter what they do.
Light the fuses!
You've done your job, Town Crier. Shut up. God. I only need mechs now.
Brutal. I would not like to see how you treat your employees.
It's because I don't have any then, isn't it?
Anymore.
Hey. SamuelTsao, it's like when you just get rid of that old friend you had in primary school because you've got new cool friends in high school now, and it's like, don't cry, look, we used to be friends, but you're not
Stop
cool
saying
anymore.
hello, all right?
Yeah, it's enough.
I will not hear ye. Shush.
Nobody even says that anymore, okay?
And, you know, SamuelTsao, purposefully or not, has done a pretty good job of making these secrets not line up all too well. Obviously, Freezing Trap to Freezer Dynamatic does not feel all too good.
I wonder how much just Ursatron into Snip Snap is just a thing. It's a mech that makes it a bit harder for SamuelTsao to deal with. Is he saving the Snip Snap for the Ziliax draw from the Ursatron, I guess? It's a real tough one, isn't it?
I think this is just what he puts as the stronger play on board, I guess. Either way, it's going to work out pretty miserably when Dr. Boom comes down, of course. As things so often do.
It can happen in a week or in a few days' time, I think.
Yeah, it's actually kind of good to do like an experiment to think how good would it be if it couldn't come down till turn 9 here. I mean, in this instance, it would probably still be fine, right? Because SamuelTsao's still so far ahead.
And in the Warrior game with Shaxi, he didn't even play Boom and won, so... I don't know. We'll find out next time on Hearthstone Grandmasters. Okay, so there are things that can happen now for Surrender.
The board can belong to Surrender, for this turn at least.
There's Trade Deadly Shot Secret.
Yes.
The secret you could make, I think now that Boom's down, Freezing Trap feels good.
Yeah.
Just to sort of negate one of the initial rushes.
I think there's consideration as well for kill command over the Deadly Shot, because lethal is nowhere near a possibility at the moment for Surrender, so I think he's much more likely to try and head for board control, just try and get the chip damage through and win through overwhelming pressure, and basically run SamuelTsao out of resources.
I can see that. And also, as well, Deadly Shot is fairly consistent versus Warrior in general anyway.
Like later on when they're discovering Boom Reaver, even if they play 2 more, it's just better, right? It's just 1 more damage. I guess they'd be rushing in at this point, but comparable at the very least.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Only 14 cards left for Surrender, which obviously seems like a lot at the moment, but having thinned out all the secrets from his deck, obviously Fatigue is not a game plan that he's looking to hit, especially with Elysiana available later on for SamuelTsao. But I guess it is more of a blessing than a curse that he's got a small deck, because it just means he's that much closer to Zephyrus, Bran, and Zul'jin as well. All the power cards left in his deck, which he just needs to find ASAP.
Yeah, we can argue all day if there's enough power there, but in this game, Surrender needs it, regardless, to continue fighting.
I probably would have guessed it worked in that way, but I couldn't have 100% told you that it wouldn't have summoned a 3/2 copy of...
Oh, okay, I knew it
Team
worked like that,
okay.
but yeah. Okay, you know what? Unleash the Beast isn't too bad.
Not the worst, eh? Alternative plays being like Ziliax, Snip Snap, but I think the echo from Snip Snap is something that Surrender can look towards trying to add to his game plan, add to his repertoire.
Yeah, I'd like multi-snip snaps, and then having, because it's very likely then that you can play Ziliax the following turn,
Yeah.
would feel much, much better.
Well, I think we're pretty clearly starting off with the hero power here. You always want to get that value in. I mean, like, you kind of want value, but Bulldozer missing out a hero power and being weak to a deadly shot and a freezing trap you haven't seen.
What if you take it just to beat Bran?
Good
You
point.
just
Good
go,
point.
well, I
Yeah.
just neutralize Bran's attack with the Bulldozer pass, you know. Actually beats it because it lives,
That's
obviously.
not a bad point. Piloted Reaper can go in combination with Ziliax on one of the coming turns, like in one go. But obviously that doesn't take out the King Crush, which is a good thing to consider.
Although there is Dynomatic with Plague of Wrath,
Or
there is
just-
Brawl,
yeah.
there's plenty of stuff. I honestly think the most consistent is the Reaper, just to have a playable minion. Yeah, I was gonna say, just Dynomatic, go.
Seems perfectly fine to me. I think there's a good chance that you get into the situation where you've lost a point of health. As crazy as it may seem for SamuelTsao, and at that point, Ziliax obviously becomes a lot better.
And also, it just pushes more damage. Like you could have
Yeah.
just traded 3-1 off if you really wanted, but that's just 3 more damage to face. It's a lot.
Sure, Snip Snap is not a board clear quite yet, although it's a pretty cool synergy you can get, obviously, with the bots getting the rush as well as the original Snip Snap. But on the other side, the Unleash the Beast doesn't look all too good either. It's just an annoying shaped board.
Yeah,
And he's got to do something soon because Surrender's just kind of dying at the moment.
yeah, and this is the problem, isn't it? This is not... Okay, it's kind of Control Warrior, sort of, Control Warrior, whatever.
Yeah.
It's beating down the Hunter. If you're being beaten down by a more or less control-style deck, what do you even do? You know, like that's... I feel like it's a huge problem. I don't know what the snapback turn is for Surrender and with this deck, and I am gonna, you probably already realized, I'm gonna harp on a little bit about Highlander Hunter, but this is honestly what I feel at least a lot of matchups. It's not just this Warrior matchup, which does feel bad, but it's a lot of matchups that feel like this, at least in my opinion.
I agree, and I think that Highlander Hunter had a somewhat inflated win rate, at least compared to how good the deck is overall at Master's Soul, because of the abundance of mages, and it plays pretty well, in my opinion, on the mages, curving out with all the aggression early on.
The secret's
Bran
really
is
mess with
fantastic.
mage,
The secret's exactly. It all works together beautifully to take out the Reno mages, and so I think when we're back in the real world, if you will, or at least the more the format that a lot of these players will be playing more of.
Was just a dream. Did you wake up in a cold sweat, Derek, when this format got announced?
Yeah. But I think given this is what the majority of these players will be playing for most of the year in Grandmasters, they'll have to come back down to earth a little bit and realize with not so many Reno mages knocking about, Highlander Hunter is going to struggle a little bit. It's not as good as people thought it was, while still a reasonable deck.
Yeah. And now, here's you, mate.
Surrender just praying, all right, Zephyrus, come on. Tell me you've had your fish yesterday,
Zephyrus,
your Omega-6 oils.
Zephyrus into Tyrion just isn't so shabby here.
What is it going to offer? Let's play what does Zephyrus offer here.
Oh no. Tyrion.
Yeah.
I want to say Ysera, even though it's not playable. It does offer cards like that sometimes, it has to me.
I think it's going to... yeah, what's the last one?
Pass. Oh, no, Black Knight.
Really? Okay, yeah. Black Knight's a good suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we're looking at like Black Knight, Twisting Nether.
Oh, Twisting Nether.
And then maybe he's low enough to get offered like, I don't know, Healing Touch?
I think he gets always offered Tyrion.
I don't know. Like Zephyrus prioritizes pressing situations rather than generically good stuff.
Yeah, pressing situations. My deck doesn't contain anything good.
That's pretty pressing. What's
the triple snip,
more
though.
pressing is that Surrender is very, very close to being dead. quite.
11 damage that I
Yeah.
can see.
Too.
I don't think shield block gets him anything that helps with this damage. The only weapon he has is Super Collider.
Yeah, no burst at all.
Nope. Honestly though, if I'm SamuelTsao, I'm chucking a lot of that to face regardless, because clearing up these snip snaps is just not worth the effort, in my opinion. I think you could actually just shield block, see what happens, and then armor up Piloted Reaper.
Would you not want a Ziliax to push an extra 3 damage to face?
I would assume it's likely you can do that next turn anyway. There's a lot of stuff to get through.
I don't know if that's necessarily a good assumption to make.
Well, my thing is, if you put your opponent to 2, how are you dealing the 2? I guess this makes it harder for it to be cleared, but if there's nothing to attach Ziliax to next turn, well, you can't deal 2 damage then next turn, right? You know, that's just unless the hero power changes to the zap, which is fair. Surprised he didn't shield block.
Yeah, me too.
Like, why not?
Yeah, I think he was maybe starting to wonder, like, it was a last second rope consideration, so I was wondering if he was thinking like Rat Trap, whereas he's obviously only played 1 card that turn.
I guess, that's true.
But yes, or just like, you know, the embarrassment you can fall into of, well, I didn't draw first, so I'm not going to draw last, and then you make the worst play of not drawing at all.
And he has the way his hand is in terms of mana cost and what it does, he has the time to play it next turn anyway. It's not a problem.
Probably. I mean, I still think it's quite a lot better to play it then, but yes, it's not the end of the world. He's still very, very likely to be winning this game, as Surrender is looking like he needs to find himself Zephyrus.
The perfect card.
Clearing the board? Can he even clear the board without Zephyrus? I guess he can hold off for a turn and go for Ziliax first.
Making the push.
He is. And even with perfect Brawl RNG, this would not be lethal quite yet. So does SamuelTsao push his advantage of keeping his opponent at a low health total and go for Brawl to try and take out the Ziliax? Or does he go for it manually with hero powers?
I think I like the Brawl.
You're probably not going to face a much scarier board than this.
No, and most importantly, you cannot let this Ziliax heal.
Well, I don't think that's that bad. I think he's still probably winning if he just takes it slow. But I agree it's worth it, especially when this happens.
His healing's like 15, you know, you would almost reset the health of the game.
Yeah. Oh, I get it, yeah. It dies anyway, but gets the pressure play out the way, which is not the worst thing.
And now hero power to clean a lot of stuff up. There's the Rover as well.
Yep, still got 1 more minion he can play without Rat Trap being activated.
Oh yeah, can't damage.
I wonder if SamuelTsao should ever have tried to activate Rat Trap first there. Like, we could have seen Rover shield block, then Brawl, which tosses the Rat Trap into the Brawl, but obviously means you can't clear up the 1/1s afterwards.
Yeah, and just having the Rover just on the board like this, like, feels pretty good, right?
I guess you can just keep ignoring the Rat Trap pretty reasonably. This seems... Now, the board is pretty much clear. Only a 1/2 on the board. Zephyrus is in hand. I think we're looking at a Tyrion now. Ashbringer coming to the rescue. Unless there's something bigger that I'm forgetting.
Your wish is my suggestion.
Maybe get some hands or something. I don't know.
True, or the full Paladin
Put your
suite.
faith
Yeah.
in the light.
Tyrion coming down, though, I think is the right call. The damage to face is just not threatening enough from this deck to warrant going for any kind of heal for lesser minion. Be able to trade off Tyrion, push a tiny bit of damage, but that represents 2 more next turn with the weapon. But Surrender now has an Ashbringer, can get rid of the weapon. Now SamuelTsao is going to get some work done.
Can maybe start to wrestle some kind of semblance of board control for Surrender, because again, there is still Bran in the deck to try and push forward the final hurrah to get the damage over the line. Or I guess, you know, Hunter's Pack could find
All sorts.
High main,
yeah, all sorts.
King Crush,
The 6/9 that pulls a minion.
Blood
love that
Stinger.
That
is a cool
so
card.
instead of seeing him at this
That'd be
turn,
nuts,
what
actually.
about Houndmaster and get that Sunreaver Spy on the board?
Sure.
Can you even
Well, I
start
mean,
with Hunter's Power?
You need to be very afraid of the... Oh, okay. Not the weapon anymore. The weapon is swap. So yeah, I guess with the weapon destroyed, you can definitely
Just play it all.
a bit
Chuck a
wider.
Hero Power in.
Yeah.
The Spy can kill off this 1/2. You can push 5 to face with the weapon. Hero Power pushes 7, and you have a decent board. Like,
My pack will hunt you
I
down.
like it.
Got something to hide?
Shield Block's still not been played from about 3 turns ago, which is very interesting.
It's true.
Well,
Obviously getting closer and closer to being limited by Rat Trap rules.
oh, there you go, never mind. GG.
Poor clip.
It is as well.
It is, yeah.
Oh my.
We could see Hero Power Plague of Wrath instead is worth considering. Because if he is afraid of the
Okay then.
King Crush off of Bran, then Devastator is obviously much more well equipped to deal with that.
It's true. It doesn't give you a minion, does it? I mean, look, he's on 6 health.
Yeah, we give him a 1/1. But yes, I agree. A much less substantial.
So now he's effectively 1 damage off lethal.
Yeah, that feels pretty good.
Oh!
yeah,
The
okay.
Zap feels pretty good too.
Now he's representing lethal. Now he's not.
Whiplash from this game.
Whoosh.
Brand sound effect. The frustration here is I think Surrender would have loved 2 Hunter's Pack before his Ulgins. It's
That's
extreme
true.
levels
That's
of value.
true, yeah. Well, it's not like he has to completely miss out on a turn then. He could still go Hunter's Pack Siamat. Which is
Divine Shield Rush.
a
would
bit
you go?
scary. But yeah, something like that. Or, I don't know, Divine Shield Rush Wind Fury is not that bad, right? It still survives at 1 health.
Yeah, I actually think I like that more because you don't want to tank. You have to clear the board because of attachment mechs.
Not necessarily. Like you've seen Ziliax, and there's
Mega
only,
Assembly
there's only
Wargear,
one.
GG.
Yeah, well, yes, but that doesn't mean you have to do it. Right? That's unlikely to happen. There's only one Mega Assembly in the deck.
It's a good Hunter's Pack.
Wow, I didn't even see the King
Yeah.
Crush did come down. That is a good Hunter's Pack.
King Crush, Snake Trap, and the Spear is just decent value as well. It's more stuff, which is exactly why I like Hunter's Pack as a card. It's just 1 card makes 3 cards worth of stuff.
Not gonna lie, fully expected the Omega Assembly into Wargear there. I was feeling it.
Imagine. God, I told you, Derek. Jeez.
Idiot.
Yeah, God.
Just
It's
win.
obvious. Armageddillo, what a card.
Are we saying it wrong? Because I think it's Armageddillo, like Armageddon,
Yeah.
rather than
But
Armageddillo.
that just feels wrong.
It doesn't roll off the tongue, does it? Yeah.
You could
Also,
say, you couldn't say. I'm not going to bother. Carry on.
The card makes no sense, right? Because it's an armadillo with a laser beam on its back, right? Surely to zap enemies. But the animation zaps your taunts. Is it like a beginning laser?
Beginning laser. Yeah.
Why does it make any sense? Because it zaps
Buff
your
laser.
hand. Oh, buff laser. I'll have one of them, please.
Yeah, someone shoots you with it and you get more buff.
Oh, brilliant.
Gyms are going to be done. It's going to be a thing of the past soon.
Just go to an
Laser.
EDM show. Everyone will be swole as heck by the end. But yeah, I want confirmation from lore experts on that one of what kind of laser is that?
I think they just make it up now.
I guess.
Depends on who you ask, probably.
Now, however, the Zul'jin, the big axe, coming directly for SamuelTsao, but it is going to have to be one heck of a big axe, zapped many times by a beginning laser, you could say, to try and take down the warrior here.
Ooh, okay.
But that's a good start.
That was key, actually. Oh, whoa!
High Main and King Crush as the two beasts. What?
And Darren, some people don't play Hunter's Pack in this deck.
And I praised them for it.
You're an idiot.
Well, yes, that is correct.
I think the card is a must.
Is Surrender just winning now? Those were god tier Hunter's Packs.
Yeah.
What on earth?
I like the way it's a double spear, double snake trap as well.
Yeah.
That's really weird. What are the odds?
Yeah, damn it, one away from jackpot.
This would be a good time for a master plan.
I think SamuelTsao does need a master plan now. This is looking awfully
What?
scary.
But at the same time, Surrender's almost just dead.
Well, imagine the kill command went the other way. Oh.
Yes, just imagine.
It's gonna help roll.
Yep, that does help the brawl. No way of activating the rat trap first, so I guess he's just relying on leaving it unactivated for the moment.
This is at best for SamuelTsao, a full board play. And worse that.
Yeah, I hate to see that.
Because also the frustration is, not that it's a huge issue at this second in time, but the pressure plate doesn't activate.
Yeah.
Because his minion didn't win, so...
It seems crazy to think that a King Crush could come down in this deck, but not for 7 mana with a 2/4 attached, for the good old school cost of 9 mana, and still actually just be pretty good.
Yeah.
Probably not on this turn. I imagine we're going to go for one of the sticky plays and save King Crush for lethal. Like, I'm looking pretty heavily at that high main.
Just high main hero power go.
Yeah.
You don't really want the spear. You don't really want anything else on the board, I think. I think just 2 chunky minions is fine.
Yeah, that's fair. And getting the chip damage from the hero powers.
Also, the Super Collider was a one-off in this list, so it's gone, it's forgotten about, it doesn't matter anymore. And there isn't a way for him to generate another one, so... I'd really just like high main hero power go. You can then do things along the lines of Mark Shot next turn on the minion that SamuelTsao will probably play. Surrender. You're a beast.
He says, I'm not messing about with tiny little kitty cats like Savannah High Main. We're getting the biggest of boys on the board and representing lethal. Is that just game?
Yeah. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. No. He can...
Wait, there's a freezing trap in play, right?
Oh, wait, is there?
Or has it been played? Well, there's a freezing trap still in hand, so the freezing trap is the one that hasn't been played.
Yeah, I don't
this
think
game?
there is a freezing trap.
Okay.
That's a big thing, because he can now mummy with Boombot.
Yes,
and
which is
clear
huge.
half the board.
Which is huge.
Okay then.
Yeah, 2/3 of the board.
But no armor at all for shield slams. Pretty miserable. Does Hunter's Pack Highlander Hunter just beat Warrior? I don't know.
I mean, it's exactly what the deck needs and what I've been complaining about, right? There's just isn't enough juice, whereas Hunter's Pack I thought was great. Oh, the snipe is sick.
Okay.
It's like,
He's alive,
awkward.
from his perspective at least. And from ours as well. Not quite dead yet. What even is this? 2 damage off lethal? That's just game!
Lethal. Surrender evens it up with this Hunter. I'm not sure how, but all I'll say, and I'll say it again, is some people don't play Hunter's Pack in the deck. I don't know why. With Zul'jin, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's,
Well,
it's just tons of stuff.
Yes, it was insane in that matchup, right? And obviously against Warrior, it's going to be pretty good.
Right.
I think it's trying to lock down some of the other matchups where you're obviously fighting for board early on, maybe against Mage, where you're just trying to go all-out aggression. But I'm fully with you. That was insane in that game.
Yeah, I think, again, it's very easy for me to comment now because it pretty much won Surrender the game, of course. But for me, it's almost it feels like the dire frenzy of the deck
Yeah.
of like, here's you just tons of stuff to do. It might not always be the best stuff because you can't control what you get.
Yeah.
Obviously, those were 2 magnificent ones with High Main and King Crush, but just more stuff to do, especially when you run in a deck that doesn't have Master's Call anymore, I think is very valuable. I just see it as Master's Call, but not quite as good.
Yeah, and I think for For SamuelTsao, there were still a couple of things that we could have seen maybe improved. Like obviously, like not doing technical mistakes, like just not playing the shield block, which I think was just wrong. Like you want to get the mana expended while you can, unless it was for saving it exactly for shield slam to go on the same turn. But when there's a rat trap in play, I know you don't want to be going for those kind of combos of cards. Like it wasn't strictly wrong, but I disagreed with it still at the same time. And I think also stuff like when he could have gone for the Plague of Wrath turn with the hero power might have been a slightly better way to approach it, rather than using up his powerful resources like the Omega Devastator, which could have killed off the King Crush.
Yep, and this is one of the awkward ones now as we moved on to the next game, which will be the decider for this one. SamuelTsao is going to be on his warrior again. Again, just shielded his warrior, played his warrior multiple times now, and he's going up against Surrender's Priest. And again, as you alluded to, Derek, this one is going to be pretty tough for Surrender. You know, we thought the previous game was tough, and it was for Surrender. I'll say, shouldn't have won that game, but did.
Yeah.
Very impressive. But the Priest, because I feel in this matchup it's a bit more straightforward, there's less chance of the win happening as sort of out of nowhere.
Well, I agree and I disagree. I think that there's less chance of the Priest kind of eking out a win way into the game, because its value generation is pretty close to non-existent, I would say. I think there's a much higher chance of just surprise win coming out of nowhere early on in the game. Like if you are able to
win.
Exactly. If you can get out a high health into Tolvir early on, or an insane Psycho Pomp to resurrect one of your high health minions, the game can just end on the spot. The Priest, the Warrior does not have infinite removal, and it doesn't necessarily have omni-powerful removal either. You know, just because it's got Shield Slam, which usually clears off a minion, doesn't mean it's killing off a 14 health Amit.
Yes, this is, if Priest became the most popular class in the game, an old friend called Execute would return to us, because
Yes.
you need those kind of decks and those kind of threats, you need those exact removals for. Whereas, as you said, the Shield Slams, the Mummies, they're not all guaranteed. I would say like one of the best additions is potentially just a very early Plague to just say board wipe, done. You know, maybe even if you can maybe get it off on curve, which is difficult because of the way the card requires minions to be damaged for them to kill, to be dead. But still, just like a board wipe with a Plague might be absolutely huge in this matchup.
And I think also the game plan that we saw from SamuelTsao in the last game could work even better in this particular matchup, where just curving out is very, very valuable against Priest, because they do obviously have some comeback tools, primarily Wild Pyromancer, to be able to swing the board back in their favor, as we see there in a pretty disgustingly strong hand. But overall, if you're pulling ahead against the Priest, they're going to struggle to wrestle things back against your relatively high health minions.
And here we go, last game of the series. The winner will go off to a fantastic start in the Grandmasters Season 2, the Asia Pacific region. The loser will start off 0-1. Not what you want. SamuelTsao versus Surrender, Warrior versus Priest. And Surrender's full mulliganed, whereas SamuelTsao's full mulliganed, whereas Surrender got a little bit more thoughts to think about here. I guess in a Fire goes, but I'm not sure about the others, and neither are you by looks things, Derek.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised to see the Wild Pyro go in there. I was expecting to see, you know, the opportunity to go for some kind of a big Wild Pyro Cleric Circle of Healing play. It is far from necessary, of course, because Warrior, a lot of the time, especially when you're playing 4 1-drops like SamuelTsao, is going to be playing those 1-drops, against which the Northshire Cleric can very nicely trade into heal up. And you know, there's a lot of other strong cards that you're looking for, because the benefit of Wild Pyromancer in this matchup, I find, is very much on the utility side of things. It's to draw you cards rather than to win you board control. So I can very much understand looking for some of the powerhouse cards like Psycho Pomp and Amit instead. Or like this. I mean, this works too, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to, you know, throw it away and then get double powered shield, which I thought was good anyway, and then you get the extra arms. I mean, I think Surrender, instead of being stumped for what to do, he's more stumped for the amount of choice he has right now.
Everything's too good.
Yeah. I mean, even Coin Acolyte is an option.
Yeah, Coin Acolyte's very tempting.
It's just not bad.
Move quickly.
Because even the... Well, it gets a bit weird, because Coin Acolyte attack face opens up Hero Power Shield Slam, which is a little bit less tempting. Whereas Extra Arms, so far as I can tell, has pretty much no punishes, at least immediately.
And also keeps you with the most options as well.
Yes. Yeah, I like that. I think in no small part due to Hero Power Shield Slam being able to take out one of your 2 minions. This seems very, very good.
And
especially his next turn, sorry. You know, we could see buffing it up beyond the point, well beyond the point of Restless Mummy even being able to take it out.
Right, and I was going to say, I do like the powered shields being held because they're so flexible in going, oh, actually, I'm going to make this just a little bit too much health for my opponent to deal with. And because they're just 1 mana and you can aim them wherever, he could use them across 2 minions, make 1 minion really big. I just like it, as well as drawing the cards. So just very, very solid from Surrender. And he might be looking real good.
Man, these are strong plays that Surrender has available.
So just trade Blademaster Circle.
Draw 2 cards. Yeah, that's pretty tempting. Restless Mummy in that instance would be able to take out the Blademaster in addition with the bots off of Snip Snap.
But if it does, your Cleric's alive?
Yeah.
Like, oof. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like Blademaster.
If we were to see another powered shield or more arms thrown down here as well, though, the Restless Mummy would not even be able to clear off the Cleric. And again, I should say, I'm speaking from Surrender's point of view. Obviously, we can see SamuelTsao does not have the Restless Mummy in hand, so it's not even as bad for Surrender as he may have thought it is. But it's something to consider.
Okay, I like this. As long as that Blademaster came down, because you also present something we were discussing before the show where, okay, yeah, you can kill the Blademaster if you then just drop Psycho Palm. SamuelTsao's in a rough spot, so... And also, funnily enough, it's 1 turn away from that Plague I talked about. Imagine if it was on turn 5, Ping Plague.
Yes. And, you know, Surrender would therefore have played very differently. I imagine heading into turn 5, he's got all these things in mind, and he's thinking, if you do want to go for the Restless Mummy here, not the end of the run as it currently stands.
So which one's he going to go for?
It's got to be the Cleric. Like, killing card draw against Priest, I think especially as Warrior, is just
almost
so
as good
huge.
as damage to the face.
Pretty much, yeah. Then, of course, heading into turn 5, again, you got to think about what can Warrior do in response. They are always the reactive deck, which is, I think, primarily going to be... Well, there's actually quite a few things. It's Dynamatic, Brawl, Super Collider, and Plague of Wrath are the main ones I'm looking at, given that Ziliax is not going to be too good quite here. Against Super Collider, you obviously don't want to make too many minions that are around the same size. Against Dynamatic, having Acolytes down pretty much locks it out of being able to be played, which is definitely something to consider. And against Brawl, you don't want to go too wide, so the Blademaster is likely to survive.
Yeah, this is basically the tricky bit.
This is very tricky.
I honestly would always end up struggling. When I'm in a point like this, where there are so many different things, I normally end up, personally, going for the, so what's the most all-in play? You know, and just going, if I do this and they don't have it, do I just win? You know, and
very fair.
It might not be the best response all the time, but I feel like instead of trying to do anything overly fancy, you just say, what's just super strong, and if he doesn't have it, just going to propel me even further into the game.
And I think this plays pretty well around most things. Like if Brawl was to come down here, obviously 50% of the time you're very happy, and even if you quote-unquote lose and the Acolyte survives, you still got an Acolyte on board. You can start drawing some major cards from your deck.
Yeah, I think it's imperative now that if SamuelTsao plans his hand, he needs to play Super Collider this turn so he can Plague next turn. Because you hit something with Super Collider, that hits something else, damages it, Plague. I think the setup needs to happen because the longer you wait, you might just die. That's how this Priest deck works.
On the other side, though, he's obviously considering, what if I leave it up and we see Wild Pyromancer, blah, 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 draw a whole bunch of cards.
Well, he could Super Collider hit the Blademaster, right?
True, okay.
I like this, yeah. Just tell the Acolyte to go away, politely. And then you have a potential setup for Plague next turn. If you don't need Plague next turn, you have Warpath Plague the turn after.
Yeah.
You might just need the Mummy next turn. So I think this Super Collider is the anchor to this whole plan for SamuelTsao going forward.
And so now it means that the Psycho Pump will resurrect either Cleric or Acolyte, I believe, both of
Is
which are
someone injured?
very, very reasonable options to get. And if obviously the Blade Master were to die on the following turn, Psycho Pomp gets a chance of getting an even better minion, I would say. Wow.
Okay, okay.
Oh. Surrender can start doing some stupidly powerful things over the next couple of turns.
And this is where I feel for both players will display how much they know the matchup. We're still very early on in this meta, and obviously everything's going to be shaken up next week anyway. But right now it's the whole, how far do I go in? Do I make him kill the Blade Master so then my Psycho Pump has a higher summon chance? Do I go slow? Do I go fast? Do I work with this Amet? Do I not? Do I draw more? Do I fill up the board?
Let's find out.
Yeah, I actually just don't know personally because I've not played this specific matchup enough. Not even close. But this is where the players who have the greater knowledge of the matchup will really start to stride ahead, I feel.
This play from Surrender is something I love as well. Okay, I was going to say I love this
Less
play.
now.
Yes, I would have liked to have seen this played on the right-hand side, I think, to go next to the Cleric. Because obviously this opens up Swing and then Plague of Wrath, because even if that just takes out the injured Blade Master, I think that's probably still good enough.
Maybe he wants him to kill
For
it.
SamuelTsao. I mean,
You know, it's
maybe.
I don't think
I would
so, but
disagree
maybe.
with that. If that was his consideration. I mean, you know, obviously it opens up for a better Psycho Pomp next turn, but I think Surrender's probably in on the Amet turn next turn. But maybe not at the same time, because if he goes Amet double Light Warden, sorry, that in a way makes his Psycho Pomp better because it gets Amet in the pool, but also makes it worse because it gets the 2 Light Wardens in the pool.
What if,
It's complicated.
in Ultimate Levels of Genius, he wants him to Plague so he can go Amet Divine Spirit next turn and be like, now what?
It's honestly not bad. I would open up like Brawl for a 50% chance.
Ooh, okay.
Unity.
It's going to go another way.
Doesn't even warrant a Plague of Wrath hero.
Well, to be fair, this is fairly safe of a play from SamuelTsao, and Warpath Plague definitely deals with everything no matter what.
I mean, like, I don't know. I would say here that, like, if the Tolver had been played on the other side anyway, the Swing wouldn't have killed it off because it would have bumped into the Cleric. So this play wouldn't have been possible even then. I'm not sure.
Could he have not done the other thing anyway? Could he not have done this, went into the Tolve, and then bumped?
Yeah, I
Done
guess.
the same thing?
Yeah, I
I
guess
think that would have done the same thing, right?
would have taken a bit more damage, but
Yeah.
it doesn't make much difference.
The outcome is more or less the same, at least.
But I still think it would have been slightly better because
Oh,
this
100%. I
isn't-
do agree.
yes.
Yeah, 100%.
This isn't even always the outcome that happens for Surrender. Still hasn't drawn either of the 2 copies of Silence in his deck, which would obviously be pretty nice, given that your options are somewhat limited against Warrior to find a strong answer for the Silence. And so I wouldn't be too surprised if we instead see, just going for a value trade here, setting up for one of the power plays over the next couple of turns instead.
I like this as well, just poke him. Oh, okay, he's playing both.
Okay.
I thought he was going to
I
drop
like
one
this?
and just be like, well, if you want to swing that weapon this last time, maybe.
It means like if there's an answer to the injured Blade Master, things get very, very messy because he can obviously just swing and everything dies. Which there is. Plague of Wrath could be used just to clear off the entire board here with a swing as well. Whether or not he wants to do that is of course another consideration because it's a pretty premium removal spell.
Clear the board just with Mummy, right?
Yes.
If he just swings once, the trade happens either
Yep,
way, doesn't
yeah.
matter, and then you Mummy double trade into
Seems
each
even
minion.
better.
Because that, again, I think...
He has to take 3 more damage, but I think
Yeah, I think Warpath Plague, just having in your hand,
it's too valuable.
is so good. Because you know, whenever you can't answer that board, boom, it's gone, finished. Don't even have to...
Especially when you haven't seen Amet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I like just the swing and the clear. Because your health doesn't matter about being low if your opponent has no minions on the board.
Yes.
So it's fine. You don't have to worry about it.
Usually. Like being able to survive, you know, staying above I think like the 14 health point I think is pretty valuable, so you're not dying to just one surprise buff with Divine Spirit. But I agree, there's no burst damage in the deck. They don't have to.
Yep. I like this. You see in this matchup how powerful the Oh my god, what's the weapon called? Go crazy.
Super Collider.
Super Collider. You see how powerful the Super Collider is in the fact
Yes,
that it's so much removal in a deck that relies so heavily on having minions. No. Surrender will want this Amit down. It might not look like the best one in the world, but he wants it down soon because we can see Omega Devastator's in hand, and if he gets to turn 10, this thing's dead.
And man, oh man, does he want this board to stick here. If he could get Psycho Pump, which also goes up to 7, potentially even 14 health on each of those minions if he was to go with the Divine Spirit. But we can see it clearly is not to be.
That was the big power push, and that is the power level of Wrath in this deck. Look at that Surrender's response is all you needed to see there to understand how much of a big deal that was. This is Amit though.
Wow, okay, now we are talking.
Alrighty then.
What? I mean, we could be talking about like 14 health minions. Devastator can't even clear those.
Only because they've not got Rush.
Oh my god, what a ridiculous card.
Oh! It's okay.
Never mind, never mind.
It's not good enough mana to play, it's fine.
Yeah, I guess not being able to go Dr. Boom, double Devastator next turn is pretty sad.
For one person.
Both these players are both doing such disgustingly powerful things.
Welcome to Hearthstone.
And you know, at the same time for Surrender, we can say he could have got his minions up to 14 health. He hasn't done that so far.
Well, okay.
That's what we're looking at now. 9, 11, 22, 28 damage. Oh, plus 4, 32. Is that lethal?
No.
Is that one off? Is that one off lethal? Oh, no. Yes. Yes. Oh, no, of course, because it damages his own minions anyway. So, sorry, yeah, I wasn't even...
Oh, the Pyro
The Pyromancer buff, yeah.
Well,
so it's
wait.
less than that anyway.
Is it? Can't he silence his Pyro first?
Well, the one-off damage includes Topsy-Turvying one of his minions.
Ah, okay.
First.
I didn't actually count it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think anyway, I mean, that was some pretty quick napkin. It's a lot of damage at the very least, and not a bad way to go for somewhat of an all-in push.
I can feel the order lulls in the chat right now. I can feel it.
Surrender going with a pretty interesting way to play this, which is clearly to go wider on the board rather than all in on one particular minion.
I think it's going to pay off for him.
Which, yeah, obviously makes a good amount of sense when you factor in the Omega Devastators, which he's definitely going to be expecting. When your opponent does that last turn, they got 2 cards in hand that have been there for a while. What are those going to be?
Are we going to see double Devastator just on the Amit?
Well, the first one goes down to 1 health, right? Which isn't even that scary, because then it obviously sets all minions' health to 1 rather than...
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you're scared of, like, circle stupid things.
Right.
Like,
I think the more pressing concern is this 13 damage that's smacking you in the face.
I guess so. You could also play the taunt, though, as well.
That's true. True.
Also, there's weird things with this Psycho Pump, where you could Topsy-Turvy, Divine Spirit, then in a fire it to actually give it more damage, which is insane.
This place is scary.
2 Warden seems pretty good. More of a defensive wall.
Or is he just going to leave the Amit up to just remove all the front-loaded damage?
I think I like leaving it for 17, because it trades very nicely, even against the taunt, right? And everything else as well. He's left very
well, like, yeah, but the
unlikely
Amit
design.
kills the taunt, that's the weird part.
Yeah, I think tanking 7, though, is fine at the moment. How much damage is this?
And this is
It's
a
just not there.
real difference between a priest that's drawn a lot and a priest that hasn't.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of moments with this deck where your hand is just full. Almost every turn, depending on how the start of the game's gone. Whereas Surrender's not really had those big draw turns that we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
So he is now just short of resources. This deck, you really need to play with almost the whole deck with this. and he's suffering from it now, I think.
Well, this is just one of the things that I found dubious from Surrender, was the fact that he didn't set up for a super powerful Amit turn. The only guaranteed Amit turn he had, because obviously he didn't know he would resurrect it, was when he went Amit Acolyte, which was good, but not insane. Whereas I was looking for stuff like you go Amit Psycho, or Amit double Light Warden and an Acolyte later on. Like, I understand that he wanted to get something on the board. It was that or just passing turn 7, which feels dreadful. And it was going to the Dr. Boom turn as well, but I don't know, it didn't work out because there was exactly the Plague of Wrath. But I guess you don't play around 2 of cards when your opponent is so low on cards. So I think at this point, SamuelTsao probably just looking at the Armadillo instead of the Dr. Boom. You just set up for lights out with 2 Morden next turn. Unless he wants to go for 2 Morden right now because he's afraid of silence, buff, and topsy-turvy.
I think Armadillo, the Rover, trade into the Palm, just hero power, right? Because any buffs will actually damage the Rover, which gives you more armor. I mean, this is very safe too, don't get me wrong.
Probably still just locks out a victory.
You have better.
That's going to be it. SamuelTsao takes a win over basically the Asia Pacific champion from Season 1.
Very much so.
Very early on in Season 2 here, so 1-0 for SamuelTsao versus Surrender now. And a pretty solid win there. It looked closer than I feel it should have been.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Surrender, I'll have to say, like, shouldn't have won the Hunter matchup with the way most of the game went, but managed it. And even then, there were moments when he was putting some pressure on getting some boards done. But yeah, it just wasn't enough. And I think with the way the bans happened, with being able to ban Mage, and because Surrender protected his Hunter, it meant that SamuelTsao's list just did well versus the rest of Surrender's lineup. So I'm not sure whether there was a bit of a issue with the protect there, or of whether Hunter is as good versus this lineup as Surrender thinks it is, or whereas something else like Mage needed to be protected just to help out with the other decks. I don't know, it's a tough one.
It is a tough one, and I think it might be setting a trend for what we're seeing more and more, at least in this week, before we see the nerfs heading into next week, where everything will change
guys.
all over again, exactly. Where I think we're going to see more respect paid to Warrior, because I think the main reason why Warrior didn't come out as the standout, talked about deck in Masters Tour Seoul was the abundance of Reno Mages. It's a difficult matchup to win because of the amount of value they have, and of course Luna's Pocket Galaxy, which is pretty much the lights out situation when they play that. But I think against pretty much everything else, the Warrior is just in a fantastic spot, because against the aggressive decks, like Rogue, I would even say Highlander Hunter, which is relatively aggressive as well. A lot of the Druids can be maybe a little bit more aggressive, or at least low on value. Against all of those, you're in a great spot as the Warrior, because your mid game is just the strongest thing that you can do in Hearthstone right now.
Yeah, it's one of those weird ones, isn't it, where the control warrior of old, which is just remove, and then Grom them or whatever, late game, just doesn't exist anymore. And now Warrior, whether you can call it control or even mid-range, you could push to call it a mid-range deck, depending on quite how it's built. The fact that it curves just as well as any other deck in the game is what's making it really scary. Yes, Boom is a nightmare to deal with, and it allows Warrior to really go the long game. But even at 9 mana, I think the fact that Warrior just has good 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drops is the scariest part about the deck. Boom's annoying and most visually frustrating to deal with, but Warrior, especially with the 2-drop now, can play on curve. And
it's ridiculous.
It has the strongest curve over the past 2 expansions.
Yeah, undeniably. Like, Rogue at the moment is like a kind of, I guess, the closest thing we have to another curve deck. It doesn't even curve that well. It wants to transition very, very quickly into damage to face as quickly as possible, because it has basically no 2 drops apart from the Fairy Dragon, which is really not too strong.